This video is actually going to be kind of a, I don't know, part 4.5 because I have some bugs to squash that I'm going to do before I move on. It's always best once you encounter a bug to stop and figure out what's causing it because sometimes as you change things, it will get worse over time. It'll compound. So let's figure out a couple of things. So one thing I noticed whenever I was trying to figure out my barriers, I shifted these side by side, and then I discovered my paddle wasn't moving all the way across the scene. And I realized that that was because of just the way the camera is set up. It's set up so that, like, at the center of the screen, it basically starts counting to negative and starts counting to positive over here. So, what I'm going to do to resolve that error, and it'll take a couple of steps. I'm going to select everything in my scene. So to do that, I selected the top thing in my hierarchy, which in my case is the main camera, and then I held Shift down on my keyboard and clicked on the lowest thing on my hierarchy. So if this had been opened, I would click main camera, then Shift, and click all of that. I've got everything selected. So I'm going to use this to get my transform, and it will move everything all together since everything is selected. And I need to move it so that this camera, instead of being in the corner of this space, I want this corner of the camera view to be where that is. So I'm going to move it over until it lines up with that line, and then move it up, like so. Now you'll notice, remember we had some kind of numbers that we had in here before. It was -7 and 7, but if we put it in -7 and 7, it's not going to be in the same location anymore because we've changed positions. So how I figured out what I wanted to fix it or change it to is I took my paddle and I just moved it to the left to where I felt like it was a good distance from the side, which is right here. So that is, the X position is 2. Exposition is like an exposition in the story. So 2, so I changed my min X to 2, and then I grabbed this and dragged it over, looked at what it was here. I think 15.85, that's how I got that second number for my maximum. And then I just set it back in the center. And you can do that with numbers by, figuring out what it was before, or I just use this little guideline right here to line it back up. So now my ball and my paddle and everything should be fine there. Now my barriers, some of you may have had barriers that were working just fine. I'm pretty sure what I did initially whenever I messed up my barriers was I resized the box collider, but I didn't resize the actual object. And then I figured out that it would be really convenient, since essentially the barriers are acting as very large blocks. I just took my block prefab right down here in the prefabs folder, and I hit Control D to duplicate it. And this I renamed. I'll call this, just rename this by double clicking slowly, Expo barrier, because it's the barrier I'm using to explain what I did. And then I put it up in my scene, like so, and I moved it to, let's just put this one at the bottom for now. So right here, move her down. And then I used my scale bars to just make it as big as I needed it to be. And I changed the color so it was obviously not a block anymore, because this is not the same prefab as the block. Let's make this one orange. Orange is pretty good. And I also turned the alpha down a little bit so that I could kind of visually know that that is outside the bounds of the screen. It's not going to be visible, and kind of give me a little tip that it has some other purpose there. And I'm actually going to leave this because at some point I'm going to need a mechanic where when it falls down here, the player dies. So I'm going to need a block down here. I'll probably rename it at that point. So let's go ahead and rename it now. Let's call it death barrier, because eventually it will be a death barrier. And on my box collider component, on my death barrier, which isn't renamed down here, so let's rename it death barrier. Never have mismatched names. That's never good. Death barrier, death barrier, death barrier. All right. So it's renamed down here. And I want to make sure that it is a trigger. Everything's been applied. Everything's the same here. I'm going to make sure to click apply to prefab so that it's got all my color components and everything saved. All right, so now it won't act as anything that stops the ball because its collider is set to a trigger, but it's there later for me to mess with as I need to. So that was kind of that little bit about bug squashing. Now when I play it, I hit play, boop, 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 shoot the ball, it bounces, it flies off the side. It bounced off the top, you might have noticed, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. It flies through the bottom. Let me see if I can get it to bounce off the side here. Let's go here. I should be better at testing my own game, shouldn't I? Well, you watched it bounce off initially. I'm going to probably just... There we go. Okay, bounces off the top. It gets stuck up there. We'll add some randomization later on in the game so this constant bouncing at exactly the same direction doesn't happen. But that's all fixed. Second thing I want to cover in this little halfway video is I've added some neat new things. If you go to your Google Classroom, this is where I've been adding the videos to the playlist. There are also two other posts on here. One is a link to the website, which of course has information anytime you need it, and also has your games that I post there. So on the physics game, I've added a section on bools, Boolean statements, just kind of to clear up some of that information and give you a place where you can go back to reference what you need to know about it. And on the game outline page, I did add a link at the bottom so that you can get to the game playlist. On completed projects, if you go to your initials, you'll find your projects that you've been sending me over email the links to. If you click on them, you should go to a page that has a label with your game, and it is put on here. If you are missing a game, then you need to make sure you go to simmer.io and log in, get that HTML code to send to me, and make sure that I put it on the website. So that's all there. Second fun thing that I've added. On Classroom, there is this post that I put on there that is called the GitHub Repository. As I make these videos, I'm going to do it in such a way that I will be posting my scripts online so that you can double check your work anytime you're having problems or you can't see exactly what I typed, because I know you're working from an iPad screen and sometimes it's difficult to tell whether it's an asterisk or a dash or anything like that. So if you click on this link and go to this location, I already have the page pulled up, so I'm just going to go over there. It will bring you to this, which isn't super straightforward, but I'll tell you how to navigate it. So if you go to physics, and I will label these more nicely than first commit, I will label them according to what video you're on, but right now this is the commit as of the 4th video. If you click on it, you'll notice this setup is kind of a lot like what it looks like in your game. So if you click on assets, these are all the folders you watched me use. And you click on scripts, and you say you want to double check your ball script. Now you don't want any of these .meta files. Just use the files with the .cs after, and it will show you exactly what I added in that script. You can go through it and double check your work and make sure everything is correct on what you have, or for clarification, everything is right there. It makes it really convenient and easy for you to go back and say, see what I changed, see what I named different things, clarifying like that this is a dot and not like a comma. I don't know why it would be, but why it's a dot and not a comma, things like that. So that's the other fun thing that I have added. So next we'll actually go ahead and move on to giving our goal the ability to take us to the next scene, and we're going to do that by basically cannibalizing some old code, because we've already written code for scene management. So we're going to take that scene management code and we're just going to steal it and put it into our new game because we know it works, and why remake the wheel whenever we can just go ahead and put it in our new game and know we already did the work once. All right, so that'll be next.